Doctor Who is coming to Magic the Gathering, and Wizards of the Coast is previewing the entire set this week. So I will be doing a video covering all the previews as they are coming out every single day until the full set is revealed. The Doctor Who Universes Beyond set will feature 4 brand new Commander Precon decks, as well as collector boosters and special secret layers to go along with the set. So in this video, I'm going to cover all the cards that were previewed today. But before we begin, 2 quick reminders. First, if you want to see all the Doctor Who cards as they are being previewed, you can head on over to our site, mtgpreviews.com. And secondly, you can pre-order these sweet new cards over at our sponsor, cardkingdom.com/mtggoldfish. Alright, we begin with the first card that was previewed today, Crisis of Conscience. This is a 6 mana 4 and double white sorcery. Choose one, destroy all tokens, or destroy all non-land, non-token permanents. So this is a nice flexible board wipe, and although it has 2 different modes, either taking out tokens or non-token permanents, I think this is going to make the most sense in a token deck. In a token deck, once you've flooded the board with tokens, having the ability to just wipe the board of all non-token permanents is actually quite useful. And in some cases, it can be an asymmetrical board wipe. This board wipe kind of reminds me of Hour of Reckoning, which is another white board wipe that is kind of a staple for token decks. And while Hour of Reckoning does have a convoke cost that can make the spell cost cheaper, Crisis of Conscience is actually more appealing to me because it can deal with non-creature permanents. So I think this board wipe is pretty darn sweet. Next up, we have a new legendary creature. This is K9 Mark 1. This is just a blue mana, so 1 mana, 1/1 legendary artifact creature robot dog with 2 abilities. It has negative as long as K9 Mark 1 is untapped. Other legendary creatures you control have ward 1, and it has affirmative, where you can pay 1 and a blue, so 2 mana total, tap it, target legendary creature can't be blocked this turn. And it has Doctor's Companion, which is a brand new mechanic with the set that says you can have 2 commanders if the other is the Doctor. So it's kind of a riff on the partner mechanic, like partner with a specific legendary. This one can let you partner with any Doctor, and it has to be a creature that is the Doctor. It can't just be a changeling like Morophon. It has to literally be one of the Doctors that is printed in this set. So it's a more limited version of the partner with mechanic. The ward 1 isn't super powerful, but it does work on all your other legendary creatures, and being able to give your legendary creatures unblockable is also very powerful. Moving on, we have a new Saga. This is Genesis of the Daleks. This is a 6 mana black saga with 4 chapters. The first 3 chapters are all the same. Create a 3/3 black Dalek artifact creature token with menace for each lore counter on Genesis of the Daleks. So the first chapter you make 1, and then on the second chapter you make 2 more, and then on the third chapter you make 3. And then the fourth chapter says target opponent faces a villainous choice. Destroy all Dalek creatures and each of your opponents lose life equal to the total power of Daleks that died this turn, or destroy all non-Dalek creatures. So this card is very sweet in a Dalek deck. I mean, it puts a lot of Daleks on the battlefield, and then it makes it very painful if your opponents want to remove all of them. It probably will just start killing all your opponents, or it's just an asymmetrical board wipe for your own deck, which is very powerful either way. I don't see it really being useful outside of a Dalek deck, because you really want to have more than just the Daleks that you're creating with this before you pop the 4th chapter. And it's also a little bit awkward if somebody wipes the board after your 3rd chapter, and then you go to chapter 4 and just nothing happens. So the card could be sweet, but it's definitely inconsistent. Next up, we have Day of the Moon, which is a 3 mana red saga. 3 chapters, each do the exact same thing. Choose a creature card name, then goad all creatures with a name chosen for Day of the Moon. So the first chapter, you choose 1 card name, it's goaded. The second chapter, you choose another card name, then the first and second chosen names are goaded, and then same with the third one. So you get to goad 3 things on the 3rd chapter. This is pretty efficient. I could see this in like certain goad decks as just being something that is useful to have multiple goad effects. Not super powerful, but pretty cool. Next up, we have a new artifact. This is River Song's Diary. It's 3 colorless mana for an artifact that has imprint. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell from their hand, exile it instead of putting it into the graveyard as it resolves. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more cards exiled with River Song's Diary, choose one of them at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. So this is a cool random source of card advantage that might be kind of sweet in Spellslinger decks. If you and your opponents are passively just casting instants or sorceries, it could be like a rampant growth, it could be a kill spell, it could be a draw spell, whatever it is, you're going to just be randomly gaining that value over time as you get to cast spells for free, as long as the diary sticks on the battlefield. Now that in itself is probably not good enough in a generic deck, but if you are in a Spellslinger deck, then you're going to be casting instant sorceries to make sure there is something imprinted on the diary, and also if you have stuff that trigger from instants and sorceries like Niv-Mizzet Parun, then you're going to get additional value from its ability. And I think it's cheap enough for me to try it out. Moving on, we have yet another Saga. This is a 4-mana Dimir Saga, so 2 blue and a black for Blink, which is the only full episode of Doctor Who I've ever seen, so I actually get the references here. So the chapters here are actually out of order, which kind of fits with the theme of the episode. So for Chapter 1 and Chapter 3, you're going to be choosing target creature, its owner shuffles it into their library, then investigates. And then for Chapter 2 and Chapter 4, you're going to create a 2/2 black alien angel artifact creature token with First Strike, Vigilance, and whenever an opponent casts a creature spell, this permanent isn't a creature until end of turn. So the way you resolve this is you do the first chapter, target creature just gets shuffled into the library, then it investigates. Then you move on to the second chapter, you make an alien angel. And then you go to Chapter 3, you shuffle away a creature, and then Chapter 4, you make another angel. I think this is the only saga where it's actually structured this way, so it's very cool. A little bit confusing, but it's a big flavor win for the episode because these weeping angels, these alien angels, actually send people back in time, and that is kind of depicted by shuffling the creature back into the library. So hooray, I get one reference, very cool. Moving on. We have Gallifrey Falls and No More, and I have the awkward orientation of this card, so I'm going to just tilt my head and read it. So Gallifrey Falls is 6 mana red instant that says it deals 4 damage to each creature, and if a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. Or the other side is No More, which is 3 mana white instant that says any number of target creatures you control phase out. And it has the fuse ability. You may cast one or both halves of this card from your hand. So this is a nice flexible card and one of my favorites that have been previewed today. The left side, Gallifrey Falls, is a nice instant speed board wipe for smaller creatures. And the right side, No More, is actually even better in my opinion because it can protect your board of creatures from a board wipe. And then if you fuse it together, you can wipe the board of smaller creatures at instant speed while also protecting your own small creatures from dying from that effect. Both sides are a bit overcosted, but the flexibility here is very nice. Next up, we have Gallifrey Stands. This is a 6 mana white-blue legendary enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, return all Doctor cards from your graveyard to your hand, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a Doctor creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Then if you control 13 or more Doctors, you win the game. Now this card actually does work with Changelings, making it much more powerful in a Changeling deck as opposed to a Doctor deck, which is going to be much more difficult to run 13 plus Doctors to make the you win the game trigger work or get maximum value out of the recursion ability. Now this card is flashy, but is it good? I would say no. The recursion is always nice, but it puts it in your hand, not the battlefield, which kind of sucks for a 6 mana spell. And then the you win the game clause is tantalizing, but 13 Doctors on the battlefield surviving until your upkeep is a huge requirement, even if you're just running a bunch of Changelings and not the actual Doctor cards. And I think it's actually going to be a liability more often than not, because if your opponents see, oh, you win the game, they're going to freak out about it, even though it's next to impossible to actually pull it off. So it's always cool. You win the game cards are always cool, and it feels fun when you actually get to pull it off because it is so difficult. But I don't think it's good. Next up, we have Run for Your Life. This is an Izzet 2 mana instant that says 1 or 2 target creatures gain haste until end of turn. They can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with haste. And it has an escape cost, so you can pay 4 mana, 2 blue and a red, and exile 4 other cards from your graveyard to cast a spell from your graveyard. which is very cool. The card looks cool. I don't think it's very good, but it looks cool. Next up, we have Don't Blink. This is a 2-mana blue instant that says, until end of turn, if one or more creatures would enter the battlefield from exile or after being cast from exile, their owners shuffle them into their libraries instead. And it has a cycling cost of 2 mana. So this is a flexible hate card against impulse draw, like Prosper players casting stuff from exile, anything that blinks, like Brago, King of Eternal, if they're blinking your creatures, any of that sort of stuff. But most relevant to the set is it focuses on hating on the Doctor's suspend abilities, their time travel abilities, exiling cards with suspend counters and then casting them once the suspend counters are all removed. So this is a nice way of stopping all those shenanigans. And then when it's not relevant, you can just cycle it, draw another card instead. It's still a pretty specific hate card. It's going to be really good in very narrow situations, but being able to just cycle it away when it's not relevant is actually very nice. Next up, we have Decaying Time Loop. This is a 4-mana red instant that says discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards, and it has Retrace. You may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. Being able to cycle away your entire hand at any time from the graveyard is actually really good. Like if you just get land flooded later on in the game, you draw like 8 cards or something and you see way too many lands, you can just discard all of them and then just get a new fresh hand out of this. So that's actually really nice. And you can do this over and over again. Yeah, this card is probably the most playable out of the entire previews today. We'll see. And then we've got Bigger on the Inside. This is a 5-mana Gruul enchantment aura. Enchant artifact or land. Enchanted permanent has tap it. Target player adds 2 mana of any one color. The next spell they cast this turn has Cascade. So this is a nice source of mana advantage and card advantage that you can attach to a land or an artifact. Probably a land because lands are less likely to blow up than artifacts. And it's just kind of nice in basically Exile Matters type decks, like Prosper decks again, but Prosper can't be in Gruul, so Faladorn decks would be great. Anything that cares about casting from exile will probably enjoy Bigger on the Inside. And then the final card we got today was Wibbly Wobbly Timey-Wimey, which is a 2-mana blue sorcery that says time travel, which is a new set mechanic. For each suspended card you own and each permanent you control with a time counter on it, you may add or remove a time counter, and then you just draw a card. So at least one of the precons is all about suspending cards, putting them from your hand into exile, and then putting suspend counters on them, and then casting them from exile once you remove the final suspend counter from that card. And time travel, generally speaking, is going to speed up that process. You're going to cast your suspended spells faster. And it also works with Exile Matters, like casting stuff from exile. So this is going to just be a staple in suspend decks, in time travel decks, obviously. It does a thing that you really want to be doing, and it draws you cards, so it cantrips. And the name is funny, so I like that as well. So that's all the brand new cards we got on Monday. My initial impression is a lot of these cards so far haven't been super powerful. They haven't been super pushed. This isn't like a Commander Horizons product where there's a bunch of new staples you have to be worried about. It's mostly a love letter to Doctor Who. It's going to be running a lot of flavorful references, and it's going to appeal heavily to Doctor Who fans, which I think is awesome. So yeah, if you're not a Doctor Who fan, you can pretty much skip over the majority of these cards. There's probably going to be 1 or 2 really good cards that can fit into one of your decks. But for the most part, these are going to be flavor first cards on the lower power range, I would say, but still very playable. And it's really just made for Doctor Who fans. So that's it for me, everyone. I'm going to be back tomorrow as soon as they preview the first of the Commander precons. I'm going to be going over all the brand new cards there and then talk about the precon deck itself. So until then, friends, see ya!